That night, my son texted, "Don't come to any more family gatherings. You're no longer family." I replied, "Thanks for confirming. I'm cancelling all automatic payments." At midnight, my phone vibrated like a storm. 97 missed calls, 163 messages. The next morning, I placed a black folder on the mediation table. When I opened it, the entire room went silent, and my family understood who really held the power switch. My name is Evelyn March, and for 3 years, I was the best-funded ATM in Clearwater Ridge, Colorado, the kind that never charged fees, never had withdrawal limits, and apparently never deserved a thank you. The family group chat pinged at 8:43 p.m. on a Tuesday. Lucas, my 38-year-old son, had typed his declaration in all caps. "Mom is no longer part of this family, effective immediately." Brianna, my daughter-in-law, added a heart emoji, then a thumbs up. Then, and this was the detail that made my hands steady as granite a laughing face. I sat in my kitchen, the one they'd never visited without needing something, and pulled up my banking app. 23 automatic payments glowed on the screen like a constellation of my stupidity. The mortgage for Lucas's house, $3,200. Noah's car payment, $540. The family phone plan, $290. The business credit card for March and belt contractors variable, but averaging $1,800 a month for supplies that mysteriously included restaurant charges and golf fees. $4,200 every month for 3 years. I started clicking. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Each confirmation screen felt like removing a leech. The mortgage cancelled. The car payment cancelled. The phone plan switched to single line. The business card authorization revoked. My fingers moved with surgical precision, the same hands that had signed every check they'd asked for, co-signed every loan, wired every emergency fund. My phone started buzzing at 11:58 p.m. Lucas first, "Very funny, Mom. Turn them back on." Then Brianna, "This is childish." Evelyn. By midnight, the calls started. I watched my phone light up Lucas, Brianna. Lucas, unknown. Number probably Brianna from her work phone, Lucas again. 97 calls by morning. 163 text messages, escalating from annoyed to furious to threatening legal action. I made coffee and opened my laptop. First task document everything. Screenshots of every payment, every transfer, every loan that was never repaid. 3 years of financial hemorrhaging, now preserved in a folder labeled Evidence. The doorbell rang at 6:15 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Lucas's face, red and puffy. Brianna stood behind him, her usually perfect blonde hair unwashed. Yesterday's mascara smudged under her eyes. "Mum, open the door. We need to talk." I opened it, but didn't step aside. "Talk. The mortgage is due in 5 days. I can't just stop paying for your house." Interesting perspective. Brianna pushed forward. "Evelyn, you're being vindictive. We're family." "No. According to Lucas's message last night, I'm not. I'm simply respecting his boundaries." "That was Mom." I was angry. "You embarrassed Brianna at the graduation party." "Ah, yes. Noah's graduation party. The one where I'd paid for the catering, the tent rental, the photographer, and the $500 cash gift that sat unopened on the gift table while cheaper presents got thank you speeches. The party where Brianna had stationed me at the drinks table like hired help and told guests I helped out a little with expenses. I existed at the graduation party. If that embarrassed Brianna, perhaps she needs therapy, not my money. Lucas's jaw clenched. You're really going to let us lose the house? You make $80,000 a year. Brianna makes 60. Together that's $140,000. The mortgage you chose is $3,200 a month. That's 27% of your gross income. Completely manageable for a couple who budgets. But we have expenses. Like the Aspen trip last month. The new 65-inch TV, the country club membership. They exchanged glances. Brianna's voice went syrupy. Evelyn? Sweetie? We're sorry about the message. Lucas was just stressed about work. Stop. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to my photos. Let me show you something interesting. Your business credit card statements. The one I've been paying. $1,800 average per month. Would you like to explain why March and Belt contractors needed $900 at Morton's Steakhouse? Or why construction supplies were purchased at Nordstrom? Lucas's face went from red to white. Those were client meetings. Then you won't mind if I report them to the IRS as fraudulent business expenses. Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. You're going to figure out your finances like the adults you claim to be. I'm done being your safety net, your backup plan, your little helper. The Bank of Mom is permanently closed. You can't do this, Brianna hissed. We'll sue you. Elder financial abuse. I laughed. Actually laughed. Please do. I have 3 years of documentation showing the exact opposite. Every transfer, every payment, every text message begging for money, including the one where you called me. And I quote, "Our lifetime backup plan." Their faces told me everything. They'd forgotten about that text. Get off my porch. You have 5 days to figure out your mortgage. I suggest you start by cancelling the country club. I closed the door on their shocked faces and returned to my coffee. It had gone cold, but it tasted like freedom. The graduation party had been 3 weeks earlier, a perfect June evening in Lucas's backyard. Fairy lights strung between posts, blue and gold decorations everywhere, Noah's school colours. I'd arrived at 4:30 p.m. to help set up, though help apparently meant doing everything while Brianna supervised from the patio with a glass of rosé. Evelyn, the drinks table needs to go by the fence, she'd called out, not moving from her chair. And make sure the ice stays full. You know how people are about warm drinks. People. As if I wasn't people. As if I was staff. The caterers I'd paid for $1,200 arranged their stations, while Brianna took credit for the menu selection. The photographer I'd hired $800 captured Brianna hugging Noah. Lucas raising a toast. The 3 of them in matching blue shirts I hadn't been told about. When guests arrived, Brianna introduced me as Lucas's mum, who's helping out today. Helping out. Not who paid for all of this. Not who made this possible. Just helping out. I stood behind that drinks table for 4 hours, pouring lemonade and arranging beer bottles in ice, while listening to Brianna accept compliments for putting together such a beautiful event. My feet ached in the new shoes I'd bought specifically for my grandson's graduation. My lower back screamed from bending over the ice buckets. But what hurt most was watching Noah open presents at the center table, 30 feet away, while I refilled punch bowls. My envelope, $500 cash, with a heartfelt letter about how proud I was, sat at the edge of the gift table, pushed aside by wrapped boxes. When Noah opened Ashley's gift card for $50, Brianna gushed about how thoughtful it was. When he opened mine, later, almost as an afterthought, Lucas barely glanced up from his phone. "Thanks, Grandma," Noah had muttered, the cash disappearing into Lucas's pocket for safekeeping. The moment that broke something inside me came at 7:20 p. Brianna's sister Lauren had asked who'd covered the catering. "Oh, we managed to pull it together," Brianna said, waving her hand dismissively. "Lucas's mom helped a little, but you know how it is. Family pitches in." Helped a little. $4,200 for this party alone catering. Photographer, rentals, decorations. Noah's gift. That didn't count the $11,000 I'd given them for graduation expenses over the past year, supposedly for SAT prep and college application fees that I later learned Lucas's insurance had covered. I'd excused myself to the bathroom and sat on the closed toilet lid. Calculator app open, adding up everything. 3 years of mortgage payments, $115,200. Car payments, $19,440. Phone bills, $10,440. Business credit card, approximately $64,800. Random emergencies, at least $30,000. $239,880. Nearly $250,000. And at that very moment, in the bathroom of the house I was paying for, I heard Brianna through the window, talking to her sister, Lucas's mum. She helps out a bit. Honestly, she doesn't have much else going on since Richard died. I think she needs to feel useful. Richard, my husband, the man who'd worked 60-hour weeks to build our retirement fund, who'd died of a heart attack 4 years ago, whose life insurance and pension they'd apparently considered their inheritance in advance. That night, I'd driven home in silence, my grandson's thank you note never written, my presence at the party already forgotten, except for the mess I'd stayed to clean up. I sat at my kitchen table and created a new folder on my laptop, started screenshotting bank statements, downloaded 3 years of transfers, organized everything by date, amount, and purpose claimed versus actual use. The most damning evidence came easily. Text messages where Brianna complained about having to be nice to the ATM, her nickname for me in her group chat with her sisters, which she'd accidentally included me in once. Voicemails from Lucas saying things like, "Mom, just transfer it, don't ask questions." Email threads where they discussed how to maximize Mom's guilt about Richard's death to get the kitchen renovation funded. I'd printed everything, color copies, organized with tabs, placed in a black folder that felt heavier than its physical weight. Financial abuse of the elderly was a felony in Colorado. But what they'd done, emotional manipulation, systematic exploitation of a widow's grief and generosity that was something else entirely. Something that couldn't be prosecuted, but could be documented. The drink station where I'd stood for 4 hours became my metaphor. Visible, but invisible. Essential, but dismissed. Paying for everything while being treated like nothing. But that party, that casual cruelty, that helps out a little. While I watched my bank account drain month after month, that was the moment I stopped being their ATM and started being their problem. I'd driven away from that graduation party knowing something had to change. 3 weeks later, when Lucas declared I was no longer family, he'd simply said out loud what they'd been demonstrating for years. The black folder on my desk grew thicker each day. Every receipt, every statement, every text message that proved I wasn't losing my mind, that this wasn't normal family support, but calculated extraction. They wanted me invisible. Fine. They were about to learn what happened when the invisible hand that held them up suddenly let go. The ambush came at 7:10 a.m., 2 days after I'd closed the bank. I was pouring my first coffee when the kitchen door, the one they still had a key to, burst open. Lucas stormed in, Brianna close behind, both looking like they'd slept in their clothes. "Mum, this has gone far enough." Lucas slammed a paper on my counter. "The mortgage company called. We're getting a late notice." I took a sip of coffee. Didn't offer them any. "That sounds like a personal problem." "Don't be cute," Brianna snapped. "You know we can't cover everything immediately. We need time to restructure." Restructure. I set down my mug slowly. "Like when you restructured your spending to include a $7,000 hot tub last month, the one you posted about on Instagram." Their faces shifted. They'd forgotten I could see their social media. "That was different." Lucas started. "Sit down." My voice cut through his excuse like a blade. They didn't sit. "Fine. Stand. But you're going to listen." I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and started scrolling. March 15th, 3,200 for mortgage. March 16th, 1,800 for your business card. March 20th, emergency transfer for car repair. 1,500. Funny thing. Lucas. I drove past Brennan's Motorsports that day. Saw Brianna's Mercedes there. The one you bought without telling me. Using the money I'd supposedly lent you for the business expansion. You were spying on us. I was running errands in my own town. But interesting that you jumped to spying rather than explaining the lie. I opened a drawer, pulled out a printed spreadsheet. 3 years, average monthly extraction, and yes, extraction, not support $4,200. But here's what's fascinating. I ran my finger down the columns. Your combined income is $140,000. Your reported expenses, excluding what I covered, total approximately $8,000 monthly. That leaves $4,000 in theoretical disposable income. So where did it go? Silence. I'll tell you where. Aspen. Vegas. That cruise last December. The country club membership at $1,800 a month. Brianna's monthly spa package at $400. Lucas's golf lessons at $300 per session. The wine club. The meal kit service for food you throw away. The premium everything while I paid your actual bills. "We're family," Brianna began. "No. According to Lucas, we're not. And you know what? He's right. Family doesn't do this." I pulled out another paper. "This is a text you sent to your sister Lauren. E is good for another year at least. Maybe 2 if we play the grief card right." E. That's me. The grief card. That's my dead husband. Brianna's face went white. "How did you... You sent it to the family group chat by mistake. Deleted it 30 seconds later. But I'd already seen it. Screenshot it. Saved it." I stood up, moved to the kitchen window. The same window where I'd stood washing dishes every Sunday dinner for 3 years, cooking for them while they sat on their phones, cleaning up while they left without saying goodbye. I revoked every automatic payment authorization. I continued. Changed all my passwords, removed myself from your accounts, called the credit card companies, and cancelled the cards where I was the primary account holder. Yes, that includes your precious business card. Lucas. Turns out when the primary cancels, all authorized users lose access. That's illegal. No, it's not. I consulted a lawyer, Patricia North, estate and family law. She found your situation fascinating. Her word? Lucas stepped forward, his face shifting from angry to desperate. Mum, Please. We'll lose the house. Then sell it, or get a second job. Or, and here's a thought, cancel the country club and apply that 1,800 to your mortgage. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I turned to face them fully. You've been living a lifestyle funded by your widowed mother while treating me like an embarrassment, a servant, an ATM with legs. I understand that when you calculated your budget for that house, you counted my money as your income. I understand that you see my grief as a resource to be exploited. I pulled one more paper from the drawer. This is a bank statement from your business account, the one I've been funding. 63 charges at restaurants, 22 at golf courses, 41 at retail stores, 11 at casinos. Lucas all categorized as client entertainment or supplies. That's fraud. Tax fraud, specifically. You wouldn't. I won't. As long as you walk out that door and never ask me for another penny. But I've documented everything. One folder for my lawyer, one for my accountant, one for the IRS, if necessary. Brianna's voice went shrill. This is elder abuse. You're having some kind of breakdown. I laughed, hard and sharp. Elder abuse. I'm 62, not 90. I run 3 miles every morning, manage my own investments, and just proved I can document 3 years of financial exploitation down to the penny. Try that argument in court. Please. Noah is 18. He can get student loans like everyone else. Or his parents can pay for his college with the $250,000 they've taken from me. Either way, it's no longer my problem. I walked to the door, opened it. Get out, and leave your key. Lucas's hands shook as he removed the key from his ring. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Oh, and Lucas. That folder I mentioned, it includes recordings. Colorado is a one-party consent state. Every phone call where you admitted to lying about what the money was for recorded. Every voicemail where Brianna called me names saved. They stood frozen in my doorway. You wanted boundaries, I said quietly. Here they are. Cross them again. And that folder goes to every relevant authority. Now get out of my house. They left. I closed the door, locked it, then went to the hardware store and changed the locks anyway. That afternoon, I called my financial advisor and moved everything into a trust with myself as the sole beneficiary and new distribution instructions that cut them out completely. The liberation was immediate and absolute. The counterattack required precision, not rage. I assembled my team the morning after changing the locks, sitting in Patricia North's office at 9 a.m. sharp. Patricia. My lawyer, 15 years of family law experience and a reputation for taking no prisoners. Beside her sat Marisol Vega, the financial advisor who'd managed Richard's and my retirement accounts before his death, who'd watched in horror as I'd steadily drained them for Lucas. They'll come at you legally, Patricia said, spreading papers across her conference table. Financial elder abuse is their most likely angle. We need to be ready. I've documented everything, I said, placing my black folder on the table. Patricia opened it, eyebrows rising as she flipped through tabs. This is thorough. 3 years of preparation disguised as submission, I replied. Marisol pulled up her laptop. Let's talk numbers. You've transferred approximately $240,000 to them over 3 years. If that money had stayed in your diversified portfolio, with average market returns, you'd have gained roughly $60,000 in growth. Combined with the compound interest on your savings, Evelyn, they've cost you over $300,000 in real terms. Can we recover any of it? I asked. Patricia leaned back. Legally difficult. They'll claim it was gifts. But, she smiled, sharp as a razor. We can make their lives extremely uncomfortable. First step, formal demand for accounting. She drafted a letter that afternoon. A formal request for Lucas and Brianna to provide documentation for every dollar I'd given them, labeled as loans or business investments. They had 30 days to respond with receipts, bank statements, and proof of business use for the credit card charges. They can't provide what doesn't exist, Patricia said. When they fail to respond adequately, we escalate. The second prong came from Marisol. We're restructuring everything. Revocable living trust, effective immediately. All your assets transfer into the trust house, investments, everything. You're the trustee and beneficiary while living. But here's the key. They can't contest what they can't access. I signed papers for 2 hours. Every account, every asset. Moving into a legal structure that would protect me from any attempt to claim incompetence or undue influence. The third prong was Elaine Hart, the boundaries coach Patricia recommended. A 70-year-old former psychiatrist who specialized in financial exploitation within families. She sat across from me at a coffee shop that afternoon, listening to my story without interrupting. "You're not angry enough," she said finally. "I'm furious." "No, you're controlled, measured, still making excuses for them in your head. Maybe I should have been clearer about expectations. Perhaps I enabled them." "Stop." She pulled out a notebook. "Write down every degrading thing they've said or done. Not the money, the disrespect." I wrote for 40 minutes. Being excluded from family photos, finding out about Noah's achievements through Facebook, being introduced as Lucas's mum instead of by my name, the Mother's Days with no call, the birthdays with gas station cards signed only by Lucas, being told not to dress so old when they had company, having Brianna rearrange my living room because it looked dated when I hosted Thanksgiving, the eye rolls when I spoke at dinners, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. "Now," Elaine said, "write what you would have bought with $300,000. A cottage in Maine for summers, travel Greece, New Zealand, the Northern Lights, a new car to replace my 10-year-old Honda, dental implants instead of the bridges I'd settled for, a painting class in Florence I'd dreamed about since Richard died, donations to the literacy program I'd volunteered for before becoming too exhausted from serving Lucas's family." "They stole more than money," Elaine said. "They stole your life, your dreams, your retirement, your self-respect. Remember that when they try to manipulate you again." The manipulation started 4 days later. First, a letter from a lawyer, not a good one, Patricia noted, claiming I'd created deliberate financial distress and demanding immediate reinstatement of support. Patricia's response was beautiful. 3 pages outlining Colorado's financial elder abuse statutes, followed by copies of 5 text messages where Lucas explicitly called the money gifts from Mom. The closing paragraph mentioned potential IRS involvement regarding fraudulent business expenses. Their lawyer dropped them as clients within a week. Next came the emotional warfare. Noah showed up alone on a Thursday evening, looking young and confused. His hair, Lucas's auburn, fell into eyes that reminded me painfully of Richard's. "Grandma, I don't understand what's happening." I made him tea, sat across from him at the kitchen table. "What did your parents tell you? That you abandoned us, cut us off without warning, that you've..." Changed since Grandpa died. I pulled out my laptop, showed him one spreadsheet, just one, 3 months of payments, annotated with what his parents had told me the money was for versus what they'd actually bought. March 10th, 1500 for your SAT prep. Here's the charge, Vegas, Bellagio Hotel. April 5th, 2000 for your college tours. Here, Nordstrom and Best Buy. Same day. Noah's face crumbled. They said you were helping with my college. I was. Every payment I made freed up money they could have saved for your education. Instead, they spent it on themselves. He left with tears in his eyes, but not before hugging me, the first real hug I'd gotten from family in over a year. I'm sorry, Grandma. I didn't know. You're 18, I said. This isn't your burden to carry. Patricia called the next morning. They're escalating. Brianna's filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services. I laughed. Actually laughed. Perfect. Let them investigate. I've got 3 years of evidence showing who was protecting whom. The investigation would become the key to everything. Because when APS looked into Brianna's claims, they wouldn't find a vulnerable elder being manipulated. They'd find a paper trail of systematic financial exploitation going the other direction entirely. The Adult Protective Services investigator arrived on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. Margaret Reeves, mid-50s, professional but warm, carrying a tablet and wearing sensible shoes that told me she'd done this for years. Mrs. March, I need to inform you that a complaint has been filed alleging financial elder abuse. The complainant suggests you may be experiencing cognitive decline and making erratic financial decisions. Would you like coffee? I asked. This is going to take a while, and I imagine you'll find it educational. She accepted. I served it in my good china, then retrieved 3 boxes from my study. Before we begin, Ms. Reeves, I want to be clear. I'm 62, not 82. I manage a portfolio worth less than it should be, but still substantial. I run 3 miles every morning, volunteer at the library twice a week, and just finished auditing an online course in contract law for personal interest. But please, investigate thoroughly. I opened the first box. Chronological documentation, starting 3 years ago when my husband died. Tab by tab, I walked her through it. The initial requests for help, reasonable, grieving widow wanting to support her family. The escalation mortgage payments becoming assumed. Emergency requests becoming monthly expectations. The degradation being treated as staff at family events while paying for everything. Margaret's expression shifted from professional neutrality to poorly concealed shock as I showed her the text messages. Brianna calling me the cash cow. Lucas joking with a friend about milking Mum till she runs dry. The group chat where they discussed strategies to maximize guilt around Richard's death anniversary to fund their vacation. This one's particularly interesting, I said, pulling out a printed email. Brianna to her sister, planning how to approach me for $20,000 for a business investment that was actually their pool installation. Note the phrase, play up how Lucas is Richard's legacy, gets her every time. Margaret typed steadily on her tablet. Mrs. March, has anyone pressured you to provide this financial support? Constantly. But pressure isn't the right word. Manipulation is... I opened the second box. Audio recordings. Colorado is a one-party consent state. Every phone call where they threatened to keep me from seeing Noah if I didn't pay. Every voicemail where they blamed me for their financial problems because I'd created expectations by helping. I played one recording from 2 months prior. Lucas's voice filled the room. Mum, if you don't cover the mortgage this month, we'll lose the house. Is that what Dad would want? His grandson homeless. You sitting on all that money while your family suffers. I wasn't sitting on money, I told Margaret. I was living on a fixed income. Drawing down retirement savings meant to last 20 more years. They knew this. The third box contained the financial evidence, bank statements showing the systematic drain. $300,000 over 3 years. While my own car needed repairs, I postponed. While I cancelled my annual physical therapy for arthritis to save money. While I shopped at discount stores to afford their luxury. The complaint, Margaret said carefully, suggests you've suddenly, irrationally cut off support, indicating possible cognitive decline. Let me show you what triggered the cutoff. I pulled up Lucas's text on my phone, the one declaring I was no longer family. This was sent at 8:43 p.m., July 15th. I stopped payments at 9:12 p.m. the same evening. That's not cognitive decline. That's accepting their terms. Margaret reviewed everything for another hour, asking pointed questions, taking photos of documents. Then she said something that made my spine straighten. Mrs. March, what I'm seeing here isn't elder abuse against you. It's potentially criminal exploitation by your son and daughter-in-law. I don't want them arrested, I said. I just want them stopped. I understand. But I need to file my report accurately. This complaint appears to be retaliatory, filed after you exercised your legal right to control your own finances. That's a false report. It's also an attempt to use APS to continue financial exploitation. 3 days later, Brianna's lawyer, a new one, cheaper than the last, sent Patricia a letter. They were prepared to sue for breach of implied contract and detrimental reliance, claiming they'd structured their lives based on my promises of support. Patricia's response included phrases like, "Discovery will be illuminating," and counterclaim for financial exploitation, and criminal referral pending APS investigation. She attached a single-page, a spreadsheet, showing that Lucas and Brianna's combined income over 3 years totaled $420,000, while they'd extracted $240,000 from me. They're not poor. Patricia wrote, "They're parasites. See you in court." The next escalation came from an unexpected source, Brianna's parents, David and Linda, who'd been silent for 3 years. Linda called on a Sunday morning, her voice honeyed poison. "Evelyn? Dear? We need to talk about this situation. You're destroying Lucas's family. Your daughter destroyed Lucas's family when she decided his mother was an ATM. That's unfair. Linda, did you know Brianna calls me the backup plan to her friends, that she laughed about how I was too stupid to realize the business expenses were their vacations? Your daughter isn't a victim. She's a con artist who happened to marry my son." Silence. Then, "You have no proof." "I have 3 boxes of proof, including the email where Brianna told you yes, you, Linda, that I was, quote, good for at least another $100,000 if we play it right." The line went dead. That afternoon, Noah texted me, "Grandma, Mom and Dad are meeting with another lawyer tomorrow. They're talking about competency hearings. I thought you should know." My grandson, the only decent person in that house, warning me about his parents' next attack. I texted back, "Thank you. Would you like to have lunch this week? Just us?" "Yes. And Grandma, I kept copies of everything you showed me, just in case. Smart boy. He'd learned what his parents taught, but turned it toward truth instead of manipulation. Patricia would be very interested in having Noah as a potential witness, though I hoped it wouldn't come to that. The stakes were escalating toward the courtroom. But I had something they didn't expect: the complete paper trail of their own greed, about to be opened in a public forum where their carefully maintained image would shatter like glass. The mediation room at the county courthouse felt like a pressure chamber. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, a long table with Lucas and Brianna on one side, their new lawyer between them, me on the other with Patricia, the mediator, James Howell, a retired judge with 40 years of experience, sat at the head. 9:15 a.m. Everyone settled. I placed the black folder on the table, thick as a phone book now, bound with a heavy-duty rubber band. "Before we begin," James said, "I want to remind everyone that mediation is about finding resolution, not assigning blame." Brianna's lawyer, a young man named Derek, who looked fresh from law school, cleared his throat. "My clients have suffered severe financial distress due to Mrs. March's sudden, irrational withdrawal of promised support. They're seeking immediate reinstatement and damages for detrimental reliance." Patricia didn't even look up from her notes. "My client exercised her legal right to control her own finances after years of systematic exploitation. We're prepared to counterclaim for financial elder abuse, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "That's ridiculous," Lucas started. "Let's review the evidence," I said quietly, and opened the folder. The room went silent. Tab 1. 3 years of bank statements, every transfer highlighted in yellow, $239,880. Tab 2. Text messages, printed and dated. I pulled out one page. July 2nd. Brianna to her sister. "He is good for another year at least. Lucas knows how to work the dead husband angle." Brianna's face flushed red. Tab 3 emails. March 15th. Lucas to his friend Michael. "Mom's like an ATM that never needs a pin. Just mention Dad and she opens right up." Lucas shifted in his seat. Tab 4. The smoking gun. "This is interesting," I said, pulling out a notarized document. 3 months ago, I sent a certified letter revoking all financial authorizations and stating that no future support should be expected or relied upon. See the signature, Lucas March, Brianna March. You both signed the receipt?" Derek fumbled with his papers. "That's not, we never?" "Certified mail, return receipt requested," Patricia said. "We have the postal documentation." Tab 5 audio recordings. I looked at James. "May I?" He nodded. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the portable speaker Patricia had brought. Lucas's voice filled the room. "Mum, you're being selfish. Dad left that money for his family, not for you to hoard. If you don't pay the mortgage, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you really are." "Extortion," Patricia murmured, loud enough for the court reporter to catch. Tab 6. The business fraud. $64,000 in personal expenses charged to a business credit card I'd been paying. "Restaurant receipts," I said, fanning them out. "Tagged as client meetings. Except..." I pulled out another paper. "Lucas's company calendar shows no client meetings those days. That's tax fraud." Derek was sweating. "We need a recess." "We're not done," I said. Tab 7. The comparative wealth analysis Marisol had prepared. 3 years. My income, Social Security, Richard's pension. and investment withdrawals totaling $92,000 annually. Lucas and Brianna's combined income, $140,000 annually. Yet I paid 79% of their major expenses. I pulled out a graph. If I hadn't given them anything, my retirement account would now be worth $900,000. Instead, it's under $600,000. At my current age and health, that's the difference between 20 years of security and maybe 12. Mrs. March, James interjected. What are you seeking? Initially, just to be left alone, but since they filed false reports with APS and threatened competency hearings, I pulled out tab 8. Written admission of financial exploitation, consent judgment for the full amount taken, permanent no-contact order except through legal counsel. That's insane, Lucas exploded. You can't. Tab 9, I continued calmly. Screenshots from social media, vacations, purchases, and expenses posted during the exact periods you claimed financial hardship. Brianna's post from Aspen, living our best life. Posted 3 days after Lucas called me crying about losing the house. Brianna grabbed Derek's arm. We need to talk privately. There's more, I said. Tab 10, the APS report. Would you like me to read the investigator's conclusion? No evidence of diminished capacity in subject. Substantial evidence suggesting financial exploitation by adult children. Recommend criminal referral. The room fell silent, except for the fluorescent light's hum. Tab 11, I continued, my voice steady as steel. A forensic accounting of the business credit card charges? My accountant found something interesting. Several charges to Nordstrom and Saks were later submitted to Lucas's company as client gift expenses. The same expenses I already paid for. Double dipping. That's embezzlement. Derek stood up. We need a recess. 30 minutes? James nodded. They filed out quickly. Brianna's heels clicking sharp staccato on the linoleum. Patricia and I remained seated. You okay? She asked. I've been preparing for this for 3 years, I said. I'm more than okay. 25 minutes later, they returned. Derek looked like he'd aged 5 years. Lucas wouldn't make eye contact. Brianna's perfect makeup was smeared. My clients, Derek said slowly, are willing to discuss terms. I don't want their money, I said. I want accountability. I pulled out the final tab. Tab 12. This is a new trust I've established. Irrevocable. All my assets are now protected. The house, the investments, everything. They can't touch it, can't contest it, can't claim incompetence to crack it. It's done. I looked directly at Lucas. You said I wasn't family anymore. I simply made it legal. What do you want? Lucas asked, his voice broken. Sign the admission. Acknowledge what you did. Agree to the no-contact order. And never, ever ask me for another cent. And if we don't, Patricia spoke up. Criminal referral. Tax fraud investigation. Civil lawsuit for triple damages under elder abuse statutes. Your choice. The black folder sat between us like a loaded weapon. 3 years of receipts, recordings, messages, each one a bullet they'd given me themselves, not knowing I was building an arsenal. We need another recess, Derek said weakly. No, I said. You have 5 minutes to decide. Sign or face the consequences. I'm done being patient. The clock on the wall ticked loud as thunderclaps. 4 minutes. 3. 2. We'll sign, Brianna whispered. Patricia slid the settlement agreement across the table. 20 pages of precise legal language that boiled down to complete capitulation. Derek's hands shook as he reviewed it with Lucas and Brianna, their whispered conversation growing more frantic with each page. "This is everything," Derek said. "They're admitting to financial exploitation of an elder." "I'm 62, I interrupted. "But yes." The consent judgment for $302,000, $240,000 in direct transfers, $62,000 in estimated interest and growth lost. Patricia clarified. Conservative estimate. With a lien on their property if they default or violate any terms. Correct? Lucas looked up, his face grey. "Mum, this will ruin us." "No," I said. "Your choices ruined you. This just documents it." Page 5 made Brianna gasp. Public apology session recorded. "For the court record only." Patricia said, "Unless you violate the no contact order or attempt defamation, then it becomes public." They kept reading. Page 8. Immediate return of all credit cards, keys, passwords, or any other access to Evelyn March's property or accounts. Page 10. Permanent prohibition on discussing Evelyn March on social media or to mutual acquaintances except to say, "We're no longer in contact." Page 12. Acknowledgement that all funds transferred were gifts, with no expectation of inheritance or future support. "This is punitive," Derek protested weakly. "This is protective," I responded. "They've demonstrated they'll escalate to false APS reports and competency challenges when cut off. I need legal protection." Page 15 was where Lucas broke. "You're requiring us to sign over our rights to contest your will. You have no rights to contest anything," I said. "But yes, you're acknowledging that in writing." "What about Noah?" Brianna asked, grasping for leverage. "You'll never see him. Noah is 18, an adult. He makes his own choices." I pulled out my phone, showed them a text from that morning. "He's having lunch with me Thursday. Your leverage is gone. Brianna." The final pages detailed the enforcement mechanisms. Any violation, any contact, any defamation, any attempt to circumvent the agreement would trigger immediate execution of the judgment. $302,000 would become immediately due, liens would be placed, and criminal charges would be filed. "Sign it," Lucas said suddenly to Derek. "Just sign it." "Lucas, I need to advise you. Sign it." His voice cracked. "Before she adds more." Patricia produced a recording device. "For the apology statement. Required before signatures." James, the mediator, shifted uncomfortably. "This is unusual." "So is stealing $250,000 from your mother?" I said. The recording device's red light blinked on. Lucas went first, reading from Patricia's prepared statement, his voice monotone. "I, Lucas March, acknowledge that between July 2021 and July 2024, I systematically exploited my mother, Evelyn March, for financial gain. I obtained approximately $240,000 through manipulation, emotional coercion, and false pretenses. I used my father's death to create guilt and obligation where none existed. I spent the money on personal luxuries while claiming financial hardship. I acknowledge this caused significant financial and emotional harm to my mother. This statement is true, and made without coercion." He pushed the recorder to Brianna. She was crying, makeup streaming down her face, but her tears felt like performance, even now. Brianna March." She choked out the words, each one seemingly pulled from her throat. The part about calling me the ATM made her voice break. The admission about the business credit card fraud nearly stopped her completely. But she finished. Then came the signatures. Patricia had thought of everything, not just signing, but initialing every page, every paragraph that contained an admission or waiver. 43 sets of initials per person. By the end, Lucas's hand was cramping. "The return of property," Patricia said, pulling out a box. "Keys, cards, passwords, everything. Now." Lucas pulled out his keychain, removed 2 keys, house and garage. Brianna added hers from her purse, 3 credit cards between them. Patricia had a prepared inventory sheet they had to sign for what they were returning. "Passwords," Patricia continued. "Write them down." "We don't have—" "The storage unit," I said. "The one you rented in my name to store the furniture you bought with my money. The online banking you set up to help monitor my accounts. The credit monitoring service you enrolled me in to watch my credit score. All of it." They wrote, filling a page with usernames and passwords I'd pretend not to already know I'd changed. "Now," Patricia said, "there's one final matter. Mrs. March has prepared something." I pulled out the last document from the folder. "This is a letter to your mortgage company, explaining that the person who has been making your payments will no longer be able to do so. It doesn't mention why, just states that the automatic transfers were a temporary assistance that has ended. You can file this with them when you apply for restructuring." It was a kindness they didn't deserve, a way to save face with the bank, to restructure without admitting they'd been living on stolen money. Lucas recognized it for what it was, the last motherly gesture he'd ever received from me. "Thank you," he whispered. "Don't," I said. "This isn't forgiveness. It's closure." Patricia packed everything into her briefcase, the signed agreements, the returned items, the recordings. "Mr. Howell, I believe we're done here." James looked between us, this fractured family around his mediation table. "I've overseen mediations for 15 years. This is— well, the agreement is legal and binding. I'll file it with the court this afternoon." We all stood. Lucas and Brianna headed for the door, Derek following. At the threshold, Lucas turned back. "Mom, No contact means no contact," Patricia said sharply, not one word. They left. I sank back into my chair, suddenly exhausted. 3 years of preparation, documentation, planning, it was over. The black folder that had consumed my dining table for months could finally be archived. "You did well," Patricia said. "How do you feel?" "Empty," I admitted. "But free?" She pulled out one more document. "There's something else. Article 10 of the agreement, if they violate any terms, particularly the no-contact order, or if they attempt defamation, this consent judgment becomes immediately executable. Your home is protected by the trust, but their house will have a $300,000 lien that takes priority over everything except the primary mortgage." I finished. "I know." "They're one Facebook post away from losing everything," Patricia said. "You hold all the cards now." I stood, picked up the now empty black folder. I never wanted the cards. I just wanted them to stop treating me like a deck they could shuffle. We walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sun. My phone had no missed calls, no texts, except one from Noah confirming our Thursday lunch. The silence felt like sovereignty. The mediator closed his case folder with a heavy thud. 3 hours of negotiation had ended with Lucas and Brianna's complete capitulation. As James Howell gathered his papers, he looked at me with something between respect and disbelief. "Mrs. March," In 15 years of mediation, I've never seen documentation this thorough. I locked the black folder with the metal clasp I'd installed specifically for this moment. When you're invisible for 3 years, you have time to document everything. Patricia and I walked toward the courthouse exit, through the glass doors. I could see Lucas and Brianna in the parking lot, standing by their Mercedes, the one they'd bought with money supposedly borrowed for Lucas's business expansion. They were arguing, sharp gestures cutting through the air. Derek, their lawyer, was already driving away. "The judgment has been filed electronically," Patricia said, checking her phone. "It's official. Any violation, any attempt to contact you, any social media post mentioning you, and we execute immediately." My phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. Consent judgment recorded against Lucas March and Brianna March. Amount $302,000. "They'll test it," Patricia warned. "They always do." "Let them," I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. I'm done being afraid of my own son. We reached my 10-year-old Honda, the car I'd kept, while they drove luxury vehicles on my dime. Patricia stopped me before I got in. "Evelyn, what you did in there? Most people would have caved, accepted some lesser deal just to end it. You didn't even flinch." "I flinched for 3 years," I said. Today was just the bill coming due. The drive home felt like floating. No missed calls screaming from my phone. No manipulative texts about being a terrible mother. No emergency requests for money that was never an emergency and never repaid. Just silence. Beautiful, expensive silence that had cost me $300,000 to buy. I pulled into my driveway, my house, protected now by an irrevocable trust they could never touch. The afternoon sun hit the kitchen windows where I'd stood so many mornings, counting out money for their latest crisis while skipping my own medical appointments to save costs. Inside, I opened my laptop and logged into my investment account. Marisol had already restructured everything. New passwords they'd never guess. 2-factor authentication they couldn't bypass. Beneficiaries updated to charities, with Noah getting a modest education fund, accessible only for tuition directly paid to institutions. At 4:30 p.m, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. "Mrs. March, this is Rebecca from Clearwater Community Bank. We received notice about a judgment filing. Mr. Lucas March is here attempting to open a home equity line of credit. We need to inform him that a lien has been placed. I deleted it. Not my problem anymore." That evening, Noah texted, "Grandma, Mom and Dad are freaking out. The bank won't give them a loan. Mom's crying about losing the house. Dad punched a hole in the wall. Are you safe?" I texted back. "Yes. I'm staying with my friend Tyler tonight." "Good. Remember lunch Thursday? I love you." "Love you too. Grandma." 3 dots appeared, showing he was typing. Then, "You did the right thing." I set the phone down and looked at the black folder on my dining table. 3 years of receipts, recordings, evidence of systematic emotional and financial abuse. Tomorrow, Patricia would file it in her office vault, insurance against any future attempts at manipulation. But tonight, I had one last thing to do. I opened the folder one final time and pulled out a single sheet of paper from the back pocket. Not evidence a list I'd made 2 years ago when the pain was freshest. Things I'll do when I'm free. Take a painting class. Visit the Oregon coast. Get my teeth properly fixed. Buy a comfortable chair just for reading. Donate to the literacy center. take Noah to lunch without his parents' permission or knowledge, sleep through the night without anxiety, wake up without dread. One by one, I was going to check them off. My phone buzzed again. A Facebook notification. Brianna had posted something. My finger hovered over it. Then I remembered Article 10, Section 3 of our agreement. Any public mention of Evelyn March on social media platforms will trigger immediate execution of the consent judgment. I opened Facebook. Brianna's post from 3 minutes ago. Some people think they can buy love and then get angry when... The post disappeared mid-reading. Either Derek had called her or Lucas had seen it and yanked her phone away. Either way, she'd just violated the agreement. I screenshot the partial post and forwarded it to Patricia with 2 words, Article 10. Patricia replied immediately, filing for immediate execution in the morning. The lien will be placed by noon. I closed the laptop, walked to my kitchen window, the same window where I'd watched them drive away after every Sunday dinner, car full of leftovers and pockets full of my money, without a backward glance or thank you. The same window where I'd cried after realizing they only called when they needed something. Tonight, that window reflected a different woman, 62 years old, financially bruised but not broken, legally protected by paper armor made from their own cruelty. Free. I pulled out my phone one last time and blocked their numbers. Not out of anger, but as punctuation. The final period at the end of a very long, very expensive sentence. The black folder sat closed on my table, its work complete. 3 years of being treated like an ATM had ended with a simple truth: I'd kept every receipt. And now, the bank was closed. Permanently. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff I'd never bought when every dollar was earmarked for their emergencies, and raised it to the empty kitchen. I don't buy family anymore, I said aloud to no one. And I don't sell myself anymore. The silence that answered felt like freedom. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts on this story. Your perspectives and experiences mean everything to this community.